We are live. Welcome to my video. This is going to be a review of the entire show Andor, which ran between 2022 and 2025. So now, this is a show I absolutely loved. I am not going to be spoiling any of the show at any point in this video. I've done, if you want my thoughts on, spoiler-ridden thoughts on individual episodes, I've done an episode on every single, I've done a video on every single episode of the show, and the link to my Star Wars playlist is in the description box where you can find all of them. I am thinking I might spoil Star Wars leading up to, but not including this show. I'm not 100% sure if I will or not, or certainly about Rogue One. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to spoil that. Tell you what, before I spoil any part of Star Wars at all, I will let you know verbally, so that if you are not, but yeah, Rogue One is of course the prequel the prequel movie that this is a prequel show to. This is a double prequel, prequelception, and it does a lot of things that I wish more prequels did, including not obsessing over answering every single question. Sometimes Star Wars prequels can get into just like, oh, well, this is how Han Solo got that particular thing, and this particular thing, this is how we met that character, and it's just not necessarily the most interesting thing to, especially because some of the answers in that movie, and I do still think there's a lot to love about that movie, but some of the answers are just like, I don't know, someone gave it to him, it doesn't really have it. And yeah, this one is more interested in deepening the characters and their interpersonal relationships, and yeah, it really excels at that. This is something I've always really appreciated about Star Wars. You can start almost anywhere. If you're going to watch any of the trilogies, you're going to want to start with the first movie of that trilogy. If you're going to watch an entire show, or any of one of the shows, you should probably start by watching the first episode, the one that aired the earliest. And I do still think, whether we're talking Clone Wars, the Genndy Tartakovsky series, or the Clone Wars, I would probably say to watch the prequel movies first. At the very least, the first two of those. Otherwise, it's a lot to take in, But, yeah, this could be your first Star Wars, and I think for some it will be. Because other than the Star Wars brand, this is also Tony Gilroy all over. Like, if you've liked one Tony Gilroy thing, obviously if that one thing happens to be, the fourth Bourne franchise movie, shame on you. I'm just kidding. I'm not the biggest fan of that movie. I think the studio pretty much ruined it more than it was his, especially based on everything else he's written and or directed. But anyway, yeah, he wrote for, I forget if it's all of them, but several of the Jason Bourne movies, directed at least one of them. He, let's see, I want to say Duplicity is him. Certainly Michael Clayton is, some of Rogue One is him, and now this, and yeah, very much so, this is him all over. If you have liked the style of one of these, you'll probably like at least something about the others as well. And yeah, and he's joined by Dan Gilroy on this one, and I'm just going to make absolutely certain. I believe I have it right, but Dan Gilroy, yeah, he was behind. So let's see, he wrote. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he wrote for some. Oh, that's right. He wrote The Fall. Holy crap! Yeah, incredibly talented. He wrote for Bourne Legacy as well. Oh, that's right. He has directed a couple of other things. I should probably try to watch those. But yeah, he wrote and directed the 2014 movie Nightcrawler, which, like some of you may be aware, that did go through some changes along the way. Initially, it was meant to be a solo story set in the X-Men universe, focusing on the titular character. But just, yeah, it went through some drafts. They weren't really loving it, and it ended up being a completely different thing, but I love it. Yeah, both of them incredibly talented, and I have recently seen some say that from now on, Tony Gilroy should be the one in charge of the direction of Star Wars rather than Filoni and crap, what's his name again? Jon Favreau, you know. And I can't really argue with that. I think that's definitely the way. I've loved most of what the two of them have, you know, been in charge of and have, you know, helped make sure happen and stuff like that. And I think we're at a point where we've had enough member-berry Star Wars, and we should get more of this, like, deep, challenging, morally gray Star Wars. That Tony Gilroy is so amazing at doing. Like, that's his brand in general, you know, deep, morally gray, and the fact that he's made it work so well with Star Wars, which for so long, like, there's been a lot of black and white. You know, they've gotten more morally gray over the years, and certainly there was some even right there in Empire Strikes Back, but they didn't embrace it this much until, yeah, Rogue One and now this show. And yeah, I think it's the way to go. I think the world has changed so fundamentally from when the original trilogy came out, and also from when the prequels came out, and now, yeah, I think it's the right time for this sort of thing. Now, Star Wars has had strong villains from the very start. This has been thoroughly proven over the decades that it has existed. This one has some of the best, some of the very most intelligent and ruthless of them. It just, yeah, absolutely incredible. And I don't think I want to give away exactly who. I think you'll probably be able to tell soon after meeting them for several of them. Sometimes people will say of a piece of media, the tension is so thick you can cut it with a knife. I would not say that about this show. In fact, you cannot cut the tension in this show with a knife. You can't cut it with a lightsaber. It is so thick and dense, it should work for the Trump administration, if not for the fact that it knows what it's talking about and actually accomplishes all it sets out to do. I think it might be Beskar. This show uses expansive sets instead of the by now overused, overly relied upon, though obviously impressive, volume. The volume is great, but it is a tool, and the best tool in the world can still be the wrong tool for the job. That you have actors walking on real sets adds a level of authenticity that's just out of this galaxy. It feels like they went to the Star Wars galaxy and filmed there, which is obviously an absurd notion. We know that's not what actually happened. It is notoriously difficult to get shooting permits for the Star Wars galaxy. But yeah, just it's and they can do like proper cinematic lighting and cinematography. The way the camera moves on this show, like, just, I'm so glad that we're back to the, I hope we're back. I hope this is going to set the trend going forward. But if not, we'll at least always have this. Like, if, yeah, it's not so worried about, oh, we gotta stick to this particular. This feels like a movie, like a long movie, obviously, because it's like basically a miniseries. Another thing, this was not like dragged out, despite, you know, we know how Disney likes to milk their IP. They had a set beginning, middle, and end when they started making this, and yeah, we got, like, let's see, I heard that originally there was supposed to be more than 2 seasons, but they did get to tell the story. You know, some have said it's rushed in season 2. I don't know, I'm not sure I really see it, but, you know, they were able to tell the story that they really wanted to, maybe in less seasons than they had wanted to, but the ending of the show is the one they always wanted to. That was what they were thinking of how to conclude this. I love both that the show avoids CG wherever it can, and also when it is necessary, it does not refuse to go for it. It delivers some of the spectacle that we expect from Star Wars, but doesn't feel the need to have it constantly. This also has some of the best CG of Disney Star Wars, especially, like, the movies have fared rather well, but some of the shows, not quite as much, you know. And yeah, you know, Star Wars, I would argue, has largely been good to great. There was a little bit of stumbling early after, you know, Disney got the rights in the live action stuff, but this definitely is, you know, one of the very best pieces of Star Wars that, you know, in my opinion. I appreciate some disagree. Let's see. And you know, this every single time, and it's probably going to continue to be a lot, that one of the anti-woke chuds, many of them right here on YouTube, claim that, oh, Kathleen Kennedy ruined Star Wars, point out how amazing this show is. You know, it's, if she gets blamed for every time a piece of Disney Star Wars is not amazing, she should also get credit for when it is amazing. And, you know, actually, I saw someone make the point, and I absolutely agree with this. Andor, the show, is what, yeah, I'm gonna try this, because Andor is also the title of this. The title of the show is also the name of the lead character. Anyway, Andor, the show, is what George Lucas would have made if he could have, like, back in the 70s. 100% agreed. And, I mean, I haven't heard what he thought of this show. I know he said he preferred Rogue One to The Force Awakens. And I 100% get. I'm not sure 100% agree. I do think Rogue One has some problems, but I did an entire video talking about that, so I'm not going to go over it here. But it definitely is, you know, The Force Awakens is like, hey, remember Star Wars? You love Star Wars. Whereas Rogue One is like, Star Wars is not, you know, it is not fun to live through. And I think we do need the latter more than the former, as already mentioned. Some have felt that this show has too little action, too few aliens and concepts that we don't see daily for it to be Star Wars. I respect their opinion, and I would understand their frustration better if The Mandalorian didn't exist. I mean, you can watch that if you really think that this one doesn't have enough. Yeah, you know, there's 3 seasons of that. There's more episodes of that than there is of this. This is very much Tony Gilroy. It is about commenting on problems with present-day America, especially relating to systemic problems, abuse of power and such. You know, again, if you've watched any of his, anything he's written for, there is at least some of that. You know, the not equally in all of that. Okay, I'm gonna just go ahead and make absolutely sure. Do I have right that he... Yeah, Duplicity was him. I do love a lot about Duplicity. It is not as focused on criticism. Like, it's criticizing capitalism. But other than that, and it doesn't go as far. Some would say it doesn't go too far enough compared to some of his other work. I guess all his other work that I'm familiar with, at least. And let's see, yeah, you know, yeah, his commenting on these things, like, I would say from a leftist perspective, but at this point, we on the left are some of the only ones willing to criticize these things. Like, conservatives act like doing so is, you know, traitorous. You know, like, right now there are people being deported from America to El Salvador because they engaged in their freedom of speech. You know, you have influencers being, you know, harassed. And, you know, there's some implicit threats. You know, just yeah, just to scare people out of criticizing the government. Now, when there is action, which again is not like constant, if that is something you feel is crucial to Star Wars, I respect your opinion. Ultimately, this show is not quite for you, and that's too bad. I would personally say maybe try to give it a chance and see if you can't get into, because it is very much about Star Wars the world, you know. I think especially like people who love the original trilogy, there's a lot for you here, you know, and like Rogue One, this tries to have technology that looks like it would have been in A New Hope. You know, it feels like just off screen this show is actually going on, and that's again something some prequels, including in Star Wars, sometimes struggle with. You know, they'll have something, and it's like, if that exists, why is that? I'm going to get off the back of Star Wars prequels briefly. Watching Men in Black 3, it's like, okay, why are they not using some of this technology in the other movies? You know, the ones set were like 40 years later. Like, well, why did they just stop using this technology? And like, at least one point, one of the characters says, you know, are we sure we want to use this? Because they don't use it in my time. But they don't actually really justify why they stopped using it, you know? So, yeah, it's difficult because you can do, you know, when you're, like, a prequel by its very nature is made after the other, you know, parts. So if you're making it as a movie or video game or that sort of thing, yeah, you can do things that you couldn't in the other ones. And now, you know, it's very difficult to resist the temptation. That's why it's called Kill Your Darlings for a reason. You know, it's not supposed to be pleasant. There's also that phrase about editing, movie editing. You're not doing a good enough job if there is not blood on the floor. You know, it's very dramatic, but yeah, it's difficult, and some. Yeah, I'm really glad that this is made by people who were able to resist that temptation. And let's see, right, yeah. When there is action, it is amazing. It tends to really keep the focus on the people, put you right in the situation more than go for being bombastic. Thus not falling into the trap that some more recent Star Wars has. Let's see. If you have watched the Pop Culture Detectives video, The Tragedy of Droids in Star Wars, you might be very happy to know this tries to resolve it. There are multiple people close to the droid B2 Emo, who lives up to the name, who actually treat this droid like a person. And it just, yeah, it's wonderful to see. The show does still have some characters treat droids very much just like, yeah, machines that they can just order around. And I don't think I'm the right person to say if it is problematic or if they're trying to do... Because, like, you know, some of Star Wars, I would definitely argue, maybe especially under Lucas, it's showing negative things without saying... you know, that it's good. It's just saying this is sadly how it is, and maybe we can make things better. You know, if you've watched, you know, I certainly I think Lucas in THX 1138 does a really solid job showing things where we find ourselves wondering, is this really a good thing? This is probably a bad thing, isn't it, Lucas? You're trying to tell us this is not how things should be. And yeah, like Rogue One, let's see, it, you know, yeah, I already mentioned, yeah, it adds moral gray to the black and white that is, you know, there's a lot of that in the original trilogy. There is some moral gray in Empire, but this goes much, much further. It asks interesting moral questions and lets us determine the answers instead of preaching to us, like a conservative show would. if that was ever going to get into moral grays. These days, it's rarer, let's go with that, than it used to be. We also really get a strong sense of the inner workings of fascism, the banality of evil. The show also does a great job making you feel like this really is a fully fleshed out universe or galaxy, something that Star Wars often has been great at implying. Here it's more shown because they have more running time to do so than the movies. Costuming, props, and practical effects are also incredible, really help bring the world to life. Let's see. In general, I love when pieces of media trust the audience enough to not immediately explain what is going on, trust us to trust them, that either this is something we don't need to fully understand, or we will understand it when we are meant to. Maybe by the end of the scene, maybe by the end of the season. And Star Wars is a franchise that has fared really well with this sort of thing before, and this is no exception. The performances are truly breathtaking. There are so many scenes when they're subtle because it's characters hiding things from others, sizing each other up, manipulating each other. And some will have to do all this convincingly whilst speaking a language that I cannot overemphasize did not exist before this show, and none fail. I believe this show will be studied for years to come. And I don't just mean by actors, I mean by spies to eliminate tells. At times, this really pushes the 12 plus or TV-14 rating. Like, I can hardly believe they were able to get away with some of what they did. It's also by far the official Star Wars live-action thing that has gone the hardest into certain types of fairly mature content. And yeah, I think it does a really great job with it. Some have disagreed. You know, there's compelling discussion of it online. Ultimately, I can't really, yeah, I can't really go into it without spoiling anything. A number of episodes of the show are mostly people talking, not action, not necessarily the most visually stunning, but it's, well, you know, the cinematography and editing are great, but sometimes it's also very performance focused. But it's impossible to look away. You're so invested in the characters and the situation. And there's such great tension. Like, there are times on this show where I was genuinely just, like, I just needed to find out what exactly does happen next here. You know, let's see. Yeah, like sometimes it's just people talking, and it's the thing that you that is being like, yeah, you just want to know what what is going to happen, and sometimes it's just information being disclosed, but it's so unbelievably gripping. Now, I think that might just about cover. Let's see, right, we also have, I gotta get into, is it, no it is not, huh, okay, gonna have to deal with that. Okay, yeah, Cassian is a character that will do whatever it takes to accomplish his current goal. Wow, I need more sleep. Let's see. Okay, so that wasn't about Cassian. I don't think I want to give away exactly what character I'm talking about, though, so I'll just say there is a character on the show. Yeah, he'll do whatever it takes to accomplish his current goal. Is he dealing with someone who only responds to money? Fine, here's a fortune. Is he talking to someone that simply does not appreciate the situation? He will deliver a monologue so well that you'll forget that, like, elsewhere he basically only got to be comic relief. If someone simply refuses to listen to him, he will pull a weapon on them and demand that they listen, not because he has any intention of losing money, wasting words, or killing that person if, that is more useful to him if he can convince them with words, but because he knows it'll work. He uses the tactics that the Empire does, and it destroys him, but he simply does not see any other way, and he cannot accept the work not getting done. Absolutely everyone is perfectly cast here. It's really cool. There are multiple, returning cast members. But yeah, the what's the word? Yeah, what's the word? Right, this is also a show that acknowledges diversity is our strength. Yeah, there are a number of, female characters. I stopped watching the, both the anti-woke chuds and most of the people that I used to watch that talk about them, so I don't know. I'm very happy with that, but I can imagine they were absolutely aggravated by that. And also, yeah, this doesn't have as many white cis-het men than, as the, yeah, as some people would very much like it to have. And yeah, like, it acknowledges something that too many white people, and I am here speaking of my fellow lefties, too often my fellow white lefties are, perhaps especially the men, are unwilling to acknowledge we didn't get here with only us. It did, we worked with women, we worked with ethnic minorities. That's how a lot of the progress that we've been able to accomplish was accomplished, and yeah, I really appreciate that this isn't trying to stroke our all too frail egos, but rather it's interested in acknowledging the, that reality. And I think that is just about, yeah, let's see, I think maybe yeah, I think this is a good place to go into. So yeah, the best elements of this, I guess, let's see, it's probably tied, yeah, the acting, the writing, the espionage elements, how much it feels like Star Wars. There's one sequence where, like, it's such a regular, just, like, human thing that, like, we've all experienced. It's just, it's people going to a store, and yeah, it helps Star Wars feel so much more like a real place. And the fact that these, like, there's stuff on the shelves, like stuff that isn't picked up by characters, that nobody interacts with some of this stuff, but there's, yeah, there's the Star Wars equivalent of snacks, and all these little things, and yeah, it feels like you could reach right out and touch it. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Right. Another thing, the way that the show really does feel like, there was a while where Star Wars was about the extraordinary. Not only people with, like, powers and lightsabers and such, but it was about people that, you know, there was, yeah, it was focused on the, yeah. And with this, we also get a glimpse into what it's like to just be a normal person in Star Wars, same as Rogue One also did. And yeah, it's such an important thing. Like, it's important to remember. Like, it's so annoying that there are people who insist that Star Wars should never change, as if that isn't, like, that was why I've said this a million times over in videos. Maybe I'll eventually stop, but I would like for them to stop saying the opposite. But the part of why we fell in love with Star Wars in the first place was not that it was the same that we were used to. It was specifically that it was different. It was specifically that here was something that was so unlike anything else we'd seen. And when you have, you know, this, what's the word? Yeah, you know, it was, you know, doing the same thing is no longer different, and that is something I will say Star Wars under Disney has struggled with, and it was in part because they, you know, a lot of people hated the prequel trilogy, and I'm not the biggest fan of it myself. I made entire videos talking about, you know, the good and the bad of those three movies. But yeah, a lot of people really hated the prequel trilogy. Disney was terrified of losing money, so they did all this, you know, nostalgia bait. And I do think that with each of these things, they've tried to change just enough, and some of the time they succeed. I wouldn't say that they just make something that doesn't do anything at all. I say that probably what comes closest is probably the three Star Wars tales, you know, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, and Tales of the Underworld. But yeah, this is even, you know, much more willing to go further. When George Lucas made A New Hope, one of the things he was doing was trying to bring back the fairy tale, you know, the kind of thing that he grew up with, and that he felt like people aren't getting into this stuff anymore. Let's make something that makes them realize how amazing fairy tales are. And I think he succeeded. I loved fairy tales as a kid. I don't think I ever stopped loving them, but if I had, yeah, A New Hope would have reinvigorated that. But today, we do also need Star Wars to be more than fairy tales. We need it to be more than myth. And yeah, here, like, we're seeing what it's like to live under fascism. And I think this is doing the Lord's work in trying to make people recognize how fascist America has gotten in recent years. You know, there are so many traits here that, you know, if you look in a history book, you'll see, yeah, that's fascism. Like, if you look at the dictionary definition, you know, and then there are some other things where thankfully America isn't there yet, and I hope that most people that watch the show, that don't already realize it, you know, will see that and say, so if we don't do something now, it could actually get worse. And I'm not talking about violence. I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about political action. We have to resist as much as at all possible. Now, okay, I try. I really do try for some of these reviews to think of something that I can say is like, oh, this is, you know, the worst aspect of this particular piece of media. I don't know that I can think of. I struggle to think of even one negative thing about this show. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, one thing I did hear from others, they felt like it was rushed. The thing I was most worried about was that there would be no tension, since technically we know the outcome. And again, you know, the thing that this does that means that that isn't the most crucial thing. This is not constantly about, oh, how will Cassian Andor get out of this one? Because we know what happens after this one, that, but it's about the people and their relationships. And I would definitely say, like, I've already watched Rogue One twice. I think I might watch it again, because this gives you a stronger appreciation of multiple characters in that movie. And yeah, let's see. The thing I was most looking forward to was this very different approach to Star Wars, and yeah, it absolutely exceeded my expectations. Let's see, and the other things also expectations exceeded. This is a show where I love every single episode. There's not even one episode where I'm like, I don't know, I guess I gotta love it. But yeah, whether we're talking the season 1 opener, overall season, or finale, same thing for season 2. They're all so amazing. Like, it's, yeah. I forget if he's done other, like, shows, but certainly I haven't watched other shows by Tony Gilroy. I'd like him to do more. I really, really hope he does more Star Wars, whether it's show or movie or what exactly, but just fantastic. Let's see. That does cover. So, yeah. I swear, I really have racked my brain trying to find something negative to say about this, and I'm coming up empty. I rate this 10 deeply compelling explorations of moral grays set in the Star Wars galaxy out of 10. And yeah, let's see, right, so this thing I need to update with the, it's gotta be, this is it. Yes. My ranking, worst to best, of every live-action Disney Plus Star Wars show. And there's something I love about each of these. The bottom two, I wouldn't say I quite love overall, but there's stuff in there that I really, really love. The Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, The Acolyte, Mandalorian, where I feel like each season just got better than the ones before it, Ahsoka, and Andor, season 1 and 2. Now let's see, I think was that the there. Really, really hope that we're gonna get more Tony Gilroy Star Wars. May the Force be with you always.